So, hey, Miranda, thank you for joining me.
Glad to be here.
It's really really cool. It's been very cool working with you. On the exhibit, the Include exhibit. It's been cool, getting to know you and learn a little bit of your story. But for those of us who are watching that don't know your story, can you just let's just start from the beginning? Can you share a little bit about, your journey, where your art, you can go even further back if you like, but specifically tell us how you really started out with your art career and your art practice, and what was your initial inspiration, and where did this passion start?
Okay. So for me, it actually started when I was a kid. I've been painting and drawing since I was like 4. So I've always loved art. I was very quiet and introverted. I was that kid that watched a lot of science fiction and fantasy movies. I still do that now. I'm a Trekkie, as they would call it. I've watched every season of Star Trek. I love dinosaurs, aliens, like all of that stuff. Yeah, a lot of people wouldn't think that when they see me, but I was very quiet, and so I've always just had the ability to draw and paint. I was always very observant. I would watch other people's behavior, things they did, and I would sketch a lot. I would draw. And my mom would buy me paint sets when I was little, and I would just sit in my room, and that's what I would do. So that's the very early beginnings. Like I said, I don't know. I just kind of always have gravitated towards creating. As I got older, it's funny, I kind of went away from art. I ended up, I went through high school, I was taking art classes. And then the crazy part is that I had an art scholarship, the Romere Beard and Art Scholarship, and I actually turned it down because I didn't see a viable career as an artist, being an artist, not being in the environment that I was in, coming from Georgia. So I'm originally from Georgia,
Right.
Atlanta area. And I actually turned the scholarship down, and I went to school for psychology. And so I was almost in my last year, and I actually changed my mind and my major, and I was like, what am I doing?
Wow.
Myself, sitting by the window, staring outside, like in the classroom. And I was like, you know what? I'm so bored with, with what I was doing. I was doing really well in it. But I was like, why aren't I doing anything art related? And so I actually went about 3 years not even painting and drawing during those college years. Yeah. And so I ended up, I decided to kind of close out my degree. So I finished my associate's degree at Clayton State, which is where I was, doing my undergrad. And then I went to Georgia State so I could go into the fine arts program there. And
Okay.
and that's kind of like where I started to really get back into art. And I started taking a lot of history classes.
Right.
Kind of went from that point. I finished my bachelor's degree there, and then I moved to DC
Cool.
and started my master's degree, which is a whole nother topic.
I think it's kind of interesting that you share with me that
Mm.
I think part of the video that we did for the Include exhibit, you shared that you actually moved to DC to be part of the art culture here, and you
Right.
don't usually hear that too often. So, can you talk about that a little bit? Because most people in this art scene or art bubble here in this DMV area, they're trying to get out.
So for me, it was the historical aspect.
Okay.
So that was more so the drive. So I love art, I love history, I love researching. And so no matter what, I'm always painting, I'm always drawing, but I love to go and actually research. I actually did a DNA test.
Yeah.
And I did it before it was trending. Okay. And then so I did it back in like 2009 because I realized that a lot of like African Americans don't know a lot about our history. And so in me doing that, I learned about the specific tribes and the specific countries that my maternal DNA tied back to. And that got me really interested in learning even more about history and learning about the arts in different places in Africa. And then combining that with the things that I had been taught here. So I moved here because the Smithsonian Institution is here. and they have research organizations all over the place. They have a huge collection. And so DC in itself has like a lot of history. There's like huge
Yes.
Black influence here that a lot of people don't know about. And so
Sleep.
going all the way back to slavery, and after slavery,
That's dope. That's cool because I didn't realize how, how you live in a place, you kind of take for granted a lot of the the landmarks and the amenities that come with living there.
right.
I didn't realize how rich we were in terms of art and culture until I started traveling and going outside of this area and trying to be a part of art scenes in other locations. Like you have to pay to get to be a part of that, fine art experience. Whereas in DC, we have all of these museums, like you said, through the Smithsonian, you have all these cultural opportunities to, be exposed to art and participate in art,
right,
or the arts for free. And I just like, man, it's wild. Yeah. It's wild. But
I'm always surprised when I meet people from the area and they haven't been to maybe some field trips when they were kids. But I'm like, you guys have all these museums. There's always like an event going on. They have a lot of like you said, cultural events and festivals. There's always the after hours events, and it's all free.
Yeah.
So that's the great thing about this area. And a lot of cities are not like DC in that aspect. That experience this art and this culture for free. And it's everything from like the fine arts, painting, to sculpture, to dance. There's theater. Yeah. It's all available like all around the DC area. Yep.
Definitely. So real quick, did you see the documentary that came on HBO recently, Black Art in the Absence of Light?
Yeah, I did. And I have not finished it because I ended up kind of dozed off a little bit. But I have to go back and finish the entire documentary. Did you watch the entire?
I did. I thought it was pretty fascinating, you know, and I'm a big fan of David, Driscoll. I kind of, I feel like I'm obligated to be one of the, being an art advocate, it's my responsibility to keep that torch and his dream and his movement alive, along with many other people. But I thought it was fascinating how little representation we have. I mean, I knew these facts because I'm in the, I'm really into advocating for artists, and I've been trying to build out these opportunities to showcase artists for several years now. So I've been doing my research, and I kind of knew the numbers, but to just see it, displayed in a documentary that way, less than 1.5% of African Americans are represented in fine art spaces and museums. Yep. I was like, man, that's like no representation. Well, it was confirmation for me that the title and the theme of the exhibit that we're doing right now include why that's so relevant and why it's so, appropriate for us to do. Because, and I did this, I had that idea and I created this whole idea and theme, before I even knew that documentary existed. But it was just like, it was confirmation, and it kind of like fit right into what they were talking about. And it's just so important that we have, participation, and we are included, and we
absolutely
are, have a seat at the table, if you will.
Yep. And absolutely, it's everything from the actual position of the artist to the curator, the person that chooses the show. Because if there's no diversity in the person that's curating the show, you could expect that the artwork, the sculptures, like any of the pieces that are in the actual show, will not include Black faces, diversity. And so that I think we were kind of chatting a little bit, and I kind of touched on like my journey through college and career-wise, what I was interested in doing once I actually switched over to the art field and my actual experience in that. Yeah,
I'm interested in hearing more about you said you studied curating, or you were interested in going down that route, curating at museums, or just how was that experience?
So initially, my initial thoughts, because you transition. So I was taught initially, kind of coming up, that you need to go to school to get a certain degree so you can get a position in a certain area.
Right.
So what I began to notice, once I finished my bachelor's degree, so I have a bachelor's of fine arts and studio arts, and it's a concentration of drawing, painting, and printmaking. And I kind of minored in history in the undergrad as well. And so what people were telling me, okay, the bachelor's degree is not enough. You got to have a master's degree to really get a job in a museum, to work in those types of environments. I was like, I thought about it. I went a few years living in Atlanta trying to get a job. I actually worked at the High Museum of Art. I worked at the Botanical Gardens. Yeah, I've had when I tell you my background is like heavily immersed in I'm that ticket person passing out tickets. I'm guiding tours. Yeah. So I've done all kinds of things. Like I've always been super interested in the museum aspect of it. And so I decided to go to grad school, and that's when I ended up coming here because of that art, that history, that culture, and then realizing that there's so much Black American history tied to after slavery with building DC, And so I came here and I went to Corcoran College of Art and Design, and I started there, and I was actually a researcher at the Smithsonian. They call it DWRC researcher. So it's like an educational research position. And I was going through the graduate program. So I actually was studying exhibition design as well as decorative arts. So in that program, those programs, they gear you towards actually designing exhibitions as well as curating, and then really learning how to study art pieces, learning about the provenance and the provenience of different items. So I've I've went into depth research.
Right.
It was a great experience, being a part of the Smithsonian, getting that behind the scenes access. But I noticed a lot of things in the program, that inclusion that you were talking about, just even with how the lessons were taught to us, looking at the dynamics of who was actually in my class. The Black faces were few and far in between there, as well as the professors. I don't think I had any professors that were Black in that program, which is really interesting, if you're teaching about art from a world perspective, which is what the Smithsonian usually includes. And so I ended up, I transitioned out of that program, and I finished at Academy of Art University in San Francisco, because my grad program, the school actually closed. And so that's one of those things that you start to learn about the politics too sometimes, on the graduate program. And so I did finish at Academy of Art University, where I got my MFA there. And I kind of started leaning more towards painting in that aspect. But I have a lot of internships and externships in the process up until the time. Yeah. So you actually mentioned something. You were talking about the history in this area, how it's rich in culture. So I actually did an internship at the Alexandria. It's the Alexandria Archaeology Museum. It's a very small museum in Virginia. And so I wanted to, have you heard of it?
No, I have to check it out.
Okay. Yes, a super small museum. It literally sits on the boardwalk of the waterfront in Old Town Alexandria.
Okay.
And I was surprised, but I learned so much about the Black history in the DC area, things that happened after the slave trade, and how the contributions that Black people made to building Alexandria, which I know a lot of people don't see it as a city. And so I learned so much. Conservation and working with objects hands-on. A lot was based around the Civil War time period, but it's a really interesting experience. I didn't realize there were so many streets in Alexandria that were named after Black people.
Wow.
Areas.
I know that.
People wouldn't know that.
We don't. Yeah, that part, Old Town Virginia, and there's certain parts of Northern Virginia that's not really, we don't really frequent often, because it has a stigma of being, that's where the old money is, and that's where the conservatives, it's very conservative over there. So yeah, they don't sell or advertise that as a multicultural or very diverse area.
And
So
it's not exactly, but that historical aspect, if you actually get a moment to like go into that museum, they really talk to you about like Black history. They have local elementary schools. They'll come sometimes, and they'll go on site digs, so you can. And a lot of the places that you'll visit, they're actually like the former slave homes, and so those are basically the archaeological like spots. But the kids come in, they take them through the experience, and they really teach them about the contributions that Black people made. And I was really surprised to really get that, like you said, in Old Town Alexandria, and for them to talk about like the impact that it had. I actually learned more there probably than I've learned in any other place that I've been. And it's probably because it is a small museum that actually works with a lot of objects. So you can't deny what the history, is.
Right. Cool.
Yeah.
So while we're on the subject of museums, let me ask you, and just fine art institutions, I know some artists, it's like their dream to, make it into a fine art institution or museum, to have that, title or accomplishment. It's like, it's a huge dream and aspiration for a lot of artists. Is that something that you've ever, aspired to become an artist that's showcasing in a museum or a fine art institution, or is it just something that if it happens, it happens? If not, you're cool.
So I'll say that probably for me, it came about a lot later because I was so immersed in like the museum culture more so. It's learning about the curating part, putting an exhibition together. I didn't really focus on my artists much. And I think I at one point took my own talent for granted because I've always been able to draw and paint. I would definitely say towards the latter part of my grad program, I realized how important it is to embrace the thing that you're really passionate about and to try to feed, the things that you have like, that you have skills in, the things that you like excel in. I don't know. I'm trying to think of the best way to. I would say through life lessons. I was trying to almost gear myself to fit a mold that wasn't meant for me, and also going against a path that was really hard for Black people to kind of follow in. So with that being said, I realized, I should embrace the artist side, the part that I do have the gifts and the talents in, and that other part, the curating part, will eventually make its way in there. I may be doing it in a different aspect. So now, I would absolutely love to make it into like a large space and like showcase my work, my talents, and work with other artists. And so it came about later for me, but it's definitely there. And I think it was because of the life journey with going as far as like trying to find a career and not really kind of neglecting the artist side.
Right. I mean, I know it's a huge accomplishment to get into like a fine art gallery or a museum, but it's such a, as you know, it's such it's controlled by such a small circle, and usually it's a small circle of academics and, people from backgrounds that don't look like us. Right. Mm-hmm. And also the criteria that they have, it's so strict and so like sometimes it's unreachable for a lot of, African American and Black artists. Mm-hmm. My philosophy has been for the last few years, we got to create our own paths. We got to create our own lane. And until, if those doors open, great. Those are their options. We're not ruling out the option to go and present and display in those types of establishments. But until those things happen, we got to create our own lanes. We got to create our own exhibitions. We got to create our own fine art environments and support each other. I don't like sometimes, you know, and I understand, you know, visual artists have, everyone has different objectives and goals and dreams. And I don't like to, you know, have an opinion on someone else's dream. But my thing is, don't wait for someone else to give you a stamp of approval to believe that you're hot.
Right.
Like, make it, you know, I've been to many, many different museums and galleries, and working with you guys, you know, emerging artists that haven't had that exposure, I feel like are just as talented, if not more talented.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
It's you know, it's a lot of politics, and it's a lot of games that are involved. At some degree, when you get to certain levels, I don't even think it's about the art. It's just a redistribution of wealth. It's people, you know what I mean? They're flipping art like they're flipping houses, or it's like Wall Street. They don't really care about the art. So
let me so just to kind of like add to what you are saying, like in terms of that other side, because I was studying, trying to like really get into curating. I did another, like it was a paid like stipend position at a company that does international art exhibitions for very large museums. They have a very extensive collection of like pieces from like the old masters, very popular artists. Some of the pieces are priceless. And so my job was basically to research museums that they could send some of their collections to. And I guess get together like a package to present to them and say, hey, you know, we have this collection of artwork. We think this would be great for your museum. And that was kind of part of my job, like actually keeping the inventory, working on part of the insurance part is in terms of like shipping the art and then finding future museums. And when I tell you, like, they have pieces that are priceless at a lot of museums that like you wouldn't even think. And the owners are extremely rich. Extremely, like, they kind of, like you said, the politics, buying and trading stocks. It was a very small exhibition company. It was only about 6 people that worked there, also located in Alexandria. And, and at that point, that's when I started to notice, like, okay, I'm working there. And it is paid like externship position, but I'm wondering if there's really even a lane for me to like step into with my expertise and the things that I was currently studying as I was working there. And I started to see that like it was very sort of, I guess, cliquey in a way. And it was basically rich people trading art with other rich people. And that's how they got their connections. And so I got a lot of that when studying the exhibition and the museum design, because it was part of this Smithsonian. We studied a lot of pieces from the Christie's like museums, their collection. I don't know if you're familiar with Christie's. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so we would work with people who have worked at Christie's, and they would come and do lectures. And what I noticed that my face was not included in a lot of these things. And I started to notice that it's a lot of rich people basically who had collections that they've picked up from hundreds and hundreds of years ago through perhaps a slave trade or something else. Yeah. And you have these collections. And basically they have found a way to make money and profit off of it without actually including the actual artists, the craftsmen. A lot of these pieces, but saw a lot of that. And these pieces of work were priceless, a lot of them. And they were worth millions of dollars. And I actually had to go and like sort through some of those inventory lists. And some pieces were actually housed where I actually worked. So I could go back, lift up the crates, look at pieces, and I'm looking at these things hands-on, and I'm just kind of like, this is amazing. But on the other hand, like, it was so exclusive to a certain group of wealthy individuals who title themselves curators. And so I kind of use that term loosely in certain, aspects. But it was an interesting experience and an eye opener.
Watching that documentary again, Black Art in the Absence of Light, I think one of the one of the artists said something I thought was just, it really resonated with me. I thought it was so profound. She said something along the lines of, art is, it's one of those practices or skills or talents that it's not, your success isn't dependent on how hard you work, right? You don't, just because you work really, really hard at being an artist and at your craft, it doesn't mean that it's going to produce success for you, at least monetarily. And I thought that was like really interesting because, you know, in most other industries, you know, that's not necessarily true. You know, if you work hard, you're going to get certain results that's going to produce, you know, a certain outcome, a positive outcome or some kind of success. But she was, you know, that artist was just spot on. And I've seen many artists who are super talented that put a lot into their craft and their practice, and they don't really receive the same, or I mean, in any type of, in comparison, they don't experience the type of success financially that some of these other commercial artists are experiencing that aren't putting in that level of work, but they have the right connections, right? Or they have the right. Sometimes it's a combination of things, but it's I don't want to say gimmick, but they found their niche, and they found like a marketing plan that they can run with that's popular, and combination of having the right contacts and, you know, the right circles. And I see people make a, you know, I'm on social media seeing guys, you know, with millions of followers selling crazy work, and it's not even original work, right? It's not even original work. A lot of times it's pop art. You know, they're you know, they're copying images that were already created by someone else. They popularized them in a different way, but it's and not to knock anyone's hustle. It's just, I'm just always curious, like, why that person made it to that level of success and this person didn't.
Yeah.
You know? But it's a very, very tough, I think, you know, passion to pursue professionally.
Yeah.
Because you're just up against so much, you know. But I think if it's what you love and you're passionate about it, you know, it doesn't really matter, you know, how much money you make.
Right.
Because you're going to do it whether my thing is, if it's really your passion, you're going to do it whether you're getting paid or not. You know, so when it doesn't feel like work, when you love it, you know, it doesn't feel like work. It's just part of who you are. It's your lifestyle. So you're going to paint and you're going to create. Creators create regardless, right? So you're going to continue to create until that breakthrough happens.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's I always tell people when I decided to go to college and choosing my majors and me even getting the MFA, I didn't actually go to learn how to paint because I've known how to do that anyway. I went for the paper that, you know, I was told that I needed. The art and the craft part has always, it's always been there. It's been something that's come like natural to me. One thing that I did have to deal with though was the reality. In order to not be homeless, I did have to learn how to produce money and bring in. And so that was, I'll say at the beginning, that was one of the things that kind of held me back a little bit from my creativity. So Atlanta, it's much cheaper to live there. Okay. You know, like the cost of living, everything is just way lower than it is here. So when you get here and then you have to pay rent and you're paying insurances. And at first I actually lived in Alexandria for like 7 years, which I will say the taxes are cheaper there. A lot of people don't know that, but the taxes are cheaper there. So I moved there and I'm going to grad school. I ended up working full time. And at some point I really got disconnected from the creative part. And that's when I realized that I was working too much and not putting enough time into my art, even though I was in grad school for it. And so at a certain point, I was like, okay, my line of thinking, because I'm in the DC area, there's so much government here. Let me figure out how to make money without spending so much time in the office so that I can paint and draw more.
Right.
So it's almost like I came up with a completely separate persona. I had to tailor my resume so that I could get a job that fit the industry here in terms of what produced money. So I ended up doing a lot of work in government. I still do that now, but I figured out a way to make it work for me. So I was able to pick up the skills that I needed to produce like a decent income, a decent salary. And it wasn't until that point that I could actually, dealing with reality, that I could actually put more time into my artwork because I wasn't worried about paying bills. And so I kind of had to perfect that side first, so that I could keep a steady flow of money coming in order to produce art. Now, eventually I would love to just have like different streams of income coming from like creative aspects, so I could just completely let the traditional 9-to-5 go. But in the meantime, that was one of the things that I had to deal with. So I had to have skills as both like an artist and like be marketable for this environment that I'm in. And I became like I would say I'm a pro at interviewing. There's a lot of contract work here, which I'm sure you're probably familiar with. And I have a skill in almost everything. And I think because, because I'm an artist, that's one of the things. I'm very flexible. And so I don't feel like there's anything I can't do because I am an artist. I can't perform heart surgery. Okay. I've done everything from website design. I've done like the EA work. I do business process improvement now. But as an artist, I found myself being able to mold into any environment. And that was also how I actually fit into any environment, because there aren't a lot of creative people in those types of environments and office environments. And I always found the way to tie my creative skills into the position, whether or not it be through writing, just like learning the process of something. Like the things that would come easy to me as an artist, I found that it was so hard for very like straightforward, more technical people to do. And they were fascinated with whatever idea I came up with. And that really helped me learn how to maneuver that side. So I could actually get money and not be a starving artist. And so, that was a huge reality of like being in this area with the cost of living. Like, how do you do both at the same time, but not give up your passion? And I was successfully able to like make that, make it work for me without totally like losing myself. So the last 2 years I've really been able to put more time into my art and do a little bit less work for a good amount of money and have funds I need in order to like buy art supplies, to produce things, to pay fees for different things.
That's dope. That's so cool. I mean, I lived in Atlanta for 5 years, so I definitely know the difference in the cost of living. I was living like a king down there, but I came back here and had a real reality check. Like, but no, I went to school I went to Howard. I graduated from Howard with a degree in radio, TV, and film.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
I got a bachelor's degree in radio, TV, and film. So my passion is my first love was filmmaking, and like you, I've bounced around and did a lot of different things, did a lot of different work in different art spaces or creative spaces rather, and then as an entrepreneur, which ultimately landed me in the real estate industry, where I had my own real estate appraisal company for about 4 or 5 years. Then the market crashed, and that kind of drove me out, and I got into, government, public service work, working for the government. So I've bounced around the government as well. But what I've learned getting to this place where I'm at right now, and I think it's going to be very true for you as well, all those experiences, even your first initial major, what you said was psychology?
Psychology, yep.
Right? There's a lot of psychology that goes into creating. I love art therapy. So I paint a little bit, but I paint for, in terms of like art therapy, it's very therapeutic for me. It helps me with anxiety and stress. But I think all of your experiences, whether it be from your first major in psychology to your experiences with curating and studying history to all the different jobs you've had, all of that's going to ultimately help you with establishing those multiple streams of income and ultimately building your art brand. You're going to, you know what I mean? You're going to be pulling from all these experiences and all these sources, and it's just going to be that much better and more well-rounded as a creative.
Right. Yep.
You know, so yeah, you know, just look at them all as, you know, just part of your journey, part of your story.
Yeah, absolutely. That's one of the things, because I've had so many different experiences trying to make it work for me career-wise here. I've been able to take the things that I've learned and actually help other people. So I do a lot of resumes for people. I won't say it's career kind of coaching, but more so like how to navigate the system. And so I feel like I kind of became like a pro at doing that. It's kind of like, how does an artist end up working, you know, in military environments, doing whatever it is I do. It's because you have to be able to be flexible, pick up a new skill, adjust. And so I started helping a lot of people along the way. Like I've met people, and I've found that sometimes it's more so true if you're born and raised and you're from an area. It seems like those people always have a harder time elevating to like the next level. It seems like they might get overlooked for people that move from other places. It's the same in any city you go to. And so I'll run into people that have kind of like, they're in a job, maybe they've been in a job for a while and they start to feel discouraged with the system. And I always come in like, hey, you know, try to use the situation to your advantage. Use this time for, to get more education, for more schooling, like update your resume, like really examine what you do here. And you can apply that to like several other fields. Like I've had to do that with my art major, with psychology. The things that I've learned along the way, I found some sort of way to like incorporate it into every single position. And so if you're a creative, for example, even if you work for the military or if you're working in a medical environment, they all use marketing or visuals to a certain extent. You know, it might not be in the most creative fashion, but in order to advertise and market or promote a business, they use visuals. If you're a writer, they use language, you know. There's always a way to apply something in the arts in those other fields. And usually they are missing that, you know. And so that's how I found as an artist that I've been able to fit in. But I can take that and reverse it to, even if someone isn't a creative, how you can fit your skills into any place that you go. So to me, there's no difference than a storeroom stocker at a shoe store than someone who is a CEO at a Fortune 500 company. Because if you are organized in detail and you know all the aspects of like being a storeroom stocker, from like you learn the logistics, you learn about supply inventory, if you learn about the technical terms and you realize that you're there to kind of like support the company's brand mission. And a lot of people don't think, okay, they're like, okay, I'm just stocking, I'm just putting shoes on the shelf. Right. No, they have a certain way, a certain order that you have to put those shoes on the shelf. So you are supporting that company's brand, their image, and you're making sure that like they can be the most effective at their business. So when I talk to people about whatever they do, and it's sometimes like people are like, what? And once I explain it, they're like, you know what? I never looked at it like that. And you are supporting that company's like brand, their mission, even if you are just a sales associate, or because you're making sure to stick to the things that they you know build as far as like their brand strategy and core
values.
So learn those technical terms. So I've been helping a lot of people along the way just to kind of like get more money if that's what they want, to get another position, even my finances. Like I was able to, with that being said, which I think is like super important, I was able to actually pay off all of my bills throughout that process. And that is probably one of my biggest accomplishments, I would say. Learning how to be here work in the system and not totally lose myself as an artist. And I had to multitask to do everything at the same time. And so it took a lot of sacrifice, being very strict with my budget, but I still made sure to always buy those art supplies, to buy paint, to buy those brushes. I mean, I've gone through moments that I had to reuse canvases. I've gone to I've used a lot of different like things to like paint and to draw on. You know, if you put a gesso down, you can cover any surface. But I managed to do that as well as pay off the bills at the same time. So when I tell you I have been around the world,
that's big, man.
Yeah, not lost myself in the process. I've really learned a lot. Being in DC, you know, DC has taught me survival skills.
Those survival skills kick in. That's awesome, you know, because I rebuke that whole term, you know, starving artists, you know, and it looks like you found, you know, creative ways to, you know, like you said, pay the bills, but also not lose yourself in that, you know, being stuck in that mode and still be a creative and an artist. Mm-hmm. That's commendable, because so many of us, I think, it consumes you, you know, and you just get sucked into this environment and this culture of just the hustle and the bustle and the paying the next thing. Mm-hmm. So you can get lost in it. So yeah, I commend you for being able to navigate through that, you know. But before we close, I just wanted to wrap up with your experience with being in the Include exhibition. Yeah. You know, I just want to give you your flowers. You know, your artwork has been very well received. The last tour I went on, this couple, they actually, the woman, she picked out your image from that abstract piece immediately. Really? Yeah, I was like, yeah, this is, you know, she used a reference piece for this. They was like, really? I said, yeah, it's her. And she was like, oh yeah, I see the hair. That's her lips. That's the. It out so fast. I was like, how did you? Wow. I was like, I see fruit baskets or something. But she was like, no, I see her face. Yeah. But yeah, everyone's been loving your work. And but yeah, from a artist perspective, you know, how's it been for you to you had opportunity to see the whole show and do a walkthrough as well? And how's it been for you?
It's been awesome just being the whole theme of the show, which I actually love. I feel like it kind of encompasses like the journey that I've been through as well. And just really being able to work with different artists in the area and seeing their work. I found that I appreciate like the effort that you put into like really promoting the show and showcasing each of the artists. A lot of people don't put that much effort into, but I think that shows like your passion. It makes me also like appreciate just being a part of the show even more, you know, because you're really taking that opportunity to get to know each person, learn about the art. Yeah. It's been a really great experience, especially dealing with the fact that there is a whole pandemic going on, you know, and then right. Yeah, so it's been an awesome experience. I actually created all the pieces for that show in particular. I consider myself to be more of a portrait artist. Yeah. But over the last year, I've been doing more abstract pieces, and just to be a lot more expressive, a lot more creative, and just to kind of let things like flow, just to see like how they came out. So I really enjoy creating the pieces for the show, and I use a number of different inspirations from nature to love, and try to incorporate that into like each of the pieces. So it's been a great experience. So I'm definitely like appreciative of the whole opportunity.
Thank you. Well, I appreciate you being a part of it and bringing your talents. But I have another opportunity for you, so I'm going to keep you busy.
Okay.
You know, I have another showcase coming up in May, where you will be able to, you know, this current exhibit, the criteria was a little more strict, but this next exhibit or showcase will, you know, you'll be able to do portraitures, whatever you feel. You
Right.
know,
Okay.
um, so I give you free reign to create whatever you feel inspired to create.
Okay.
So that'll be in May, and it's going to be centered around Mental Health Awareness Month and
Okay.
tying in art therapy. So that's
Okay.
that's one of my passions, and I wanted to really um, showcase that next time around.
Okay.
All right. So again, Miranda, I appreciate you jumping on, sharing your time, sharing your story with us, and I really look forward to doing more work with you. And again, it's been a cool experience.
Yeah. Thank you for the opportunity, and I enjoyed the interview.
All right, cool. So I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thanks.
Peace.